24 septembre 1945. Quand Lady Bradshaw vous fait demander, vous obtempérez. Marie et moi devions partir en lune de miel, mais nous n'aurions pour rien au monde à laisser passer l'occasion de dîner avec l'une des plus grandes antiquaires britanniques. Lors de notre rencontre, Bradshaw arborait une broche qui a attiré l'attention de Marie. Une relique sumérienne découverte sur un site de fouilles dans le royaume hachémite d'Irak. Après le dîner, elle nous a montré une autre découverte provenant du même site. Une tablette cunéiforme en or. Elle l'a appelée la dernière pièce du puzzle de sa carrière. Il s'agit d'une carte indiquant l'emplacement du tombeau d'Alexandre. Si elle est vraie, ce dernier se trouve quelque part à la frontière entre la Syrie et l'Irak. Lady Bradshaw veut que nous dirigions cette expédition. Je prends conscience que notre lune de miel aura pour cadre un site de fouilles poussiéreux dans les monts Zagros. 2 avril 1946. Notre équipe est créée. Tout en haut de ma liste, j'avais choisi mon ancien compagnon d'armes, Crow, le bulldog d'Omaha Beach. Nous l'avons retrouvé au Caire, en train de jouer à des jeux d'argent dans un bar. Crow a recommandé Arthur Pullman, un contremaître expérimenté. À Haïfa, nous avons récupéré mon assistante à la curiosité toujours aiguisée, Aline Journaux. Et Lady Bradshaw a insisté pour que son conseiller, Ellis von Witten, soit présent. C'est un archéologue que je connais bien grâce à sa mauvaise réputation. Notre équipe est au complet. Nous allons mettre le cap sur le Liban, et de là, nous prendrons le train pour Bagdad. « 21 octobre 1946. Crow a été le premier à pénétrer dans le tombeau, honneur qu'il a partagé avec Bessie, sa maudite mitrailleuse. C'est une arme énorme, mais elle semblait rassurer les ouvriers qui creusaient. Cet endroit est resté inexploré pendant des siècles. Ce n'est pas le tombeau d'Alexandre le Grand, mais le temple d'un dieu roi encore plus ancien, le despote acadien Naram-Sin. Nous avons fait erreur, mais Lady Bradshaw pense tout de même qu'il s'agit d'une découverte majeure. Une découverte qui fera entrer mon nom dans les livres d'histoire. En voyant cette salle majestueuse, je n'ai aucune raison de... 23 octobre 1946. Les catacombes sous le temple sont jonchées d'ossements humains. Aline, qui a travaillé sur les sites sacrificiels d'El Castillo, n'a jamais rien vu de tel. Les Acadiens ont tué des milliers de personnes au nom de leur dieu. La plupart furent décapités, tandis que d'autres connurent une mort brutale, puis furent jetés dans des charniers, dans un massacre devenu incontrôlable. Quel fléau, quel cataclysme méritait un tel tribut. Tant de sang versé. Et pourquoi? Quoi qu'il se soit passé il y a plusieurs millénaires, c'est un secret qu'il nous faut découvrir. Notre travail débute enfin. 7 décembre 1946. Nos découvertes sont tellement spectaculaires que je n'ai pas résisté à sabrer le champagne. En entrant dans la tente de la mission pour en verser un verre à Marie, j'ai compris que quelque chose n'allait pas. Elle avait trouvé la caisse de dynamite de Bradshaw. J'ai tenté de la calmer. Mais elle s'est emportée, vitupérant contre les risques liés à l'utilisation d'explosifs sur un site. Évidemment, elle avait raison. Et je m'en suis voulu de lui avoir caché cette information. C'est alors que Crow est arrivé pour récupérer la dynamite. Quand Marie lui a ordonné de la reposer, il l'a regardée droit dans les yeux et lui a dit avoir trouvé quelque chose en bas. Le fond du gouffre puait la mort. Il était jonché de cadavres encore assez frais pour être entièrement recouvert de mouches. Crow pense que des bandits du coin ont dû jeter leurs victimes ici après les avoir dévalisées. Je plains ces pauvres malheureux. J'imagine la peur qu'ils ont dû ressentir en dégringolant vers la mort. Mais ce n'est pas ce qu'ils voulaient nous montrer. une étrange lumière traversait la roche. Quand Marie a demandé de quoi il s'agissait, Bradshaw a déclaré qu'elle comptait bien le découvrir. Là-dessus, elle a adressé un signe de tête à Crow, qui a ouvert la caisse de dynamite. Après avoir fait un trou dans la roche, nous avons découvert un passage menant à un monde étrange, caché dans les profondeurs. Il dégageait une phosphorescence qui nous nimbait tous d'une lueur surnaturelle. Lady Bradshaw a insisté pour que nous descendions davantage. Marie a sans doute raison. Bradshaw prend de plus en plus de risques et devient incontrôlable. Mais je ne peux m'empêcher de penser à ce qui se cache dans les profondeurs. Je travaille maintenant avec Crow et Pullman afin de mettre en place un train et un ascenseur pour descendre dans le puits. Je me demande quel mystère renferme ce lieu. 13 décembre. Crow, Bradshaw et moi-même avons pris l'ascenseur pour descendre. Alors que nous partions, j'ai été frappé par le changement de comportement de Bradshaw. Elle semblait enthousiaste, voire exaltée par notre découverte. Quand nous avons atteint le fond, Crow n'a pas pu s'empêcher de prêter serment. Devant nous, dans un caveau vertigineux, reposait une cité. Elle était repoussante, inquiétante, immense et endormie. Une formidable carcasse construite à une époque lointaine, antérieure aux hommes. Stupéfait, je suis tombé à genoux. « 28 décembre. Dieu nous protège. Pendant des jours, nous avons étudié ce royaume de mort et de silence où des abominations sont ensevelies. Ces monstruosités ont attaqué ma pauvre Marie. Crow l'a retrouvée inconsciente dans la salle stellaire, ses notes éparpillées autour d'elle. Il l'a ramenée jusqu'à notre réserve et l'a allongée dans l'une des cellules. Quand Bradshaw a appris ce qui s'était passé, elle s'est montrée plutôt évasive quant au travail de Marie là-bas. C'est avec angoisse et confusion que mon épouse m'a parlé d'un ton fiévreux pendant que je lui lavais le visage. J'ai décidé de la veiller. Je prie pour que sa fièvre baisse afin que nous puissions quitter cet endroit maudit. « 29 décembre. Pullman dit que la radio a été sabotée par une personne experte, puisque les fils principaux ont été sectionnés. Quelqu'un veut nous couper de l'extérieur. Aline s'est battue dans la résistance, et bien qu'elle en soit capable, je refuse de croire qu'elle est responsable. De mon côté, je nourris de sérieux doutes vis-à-vis de Van Witten, mais sans preuve, tout le monde reste suspect. Tout ce que je peux faire, c'est mettre en place des sentinelles pour protéger l'équipement de l'expédition. « 30 décembre. L'état de Marie s'aggrave. Ce soir, en sortant de mon hébétement, j'ai découvert Lady Bradshaw en train de poser d'autres fichues questions à ma femme. Marie parlait de démons ailés en bredouillant. À ces mots, les yeux de Bradshaw se sont mis à briller et elle a demandé à mon épouse si elle sentait leur présence. Dans son délire, Marie s'est attaquée à Bradshaw et lui a griffé la poitrine. Lady Bradshaw s'est éloignée et au bout d'un moment, j'ai réussi à calmer la femme. « 31 décembre. Marie est morte. Je suis resté assis près d'elle tandis qu'elle s'éteignait, en lui disant combien j'étais désolé. Désolé d'avoir accepté l'offre de Bradshaw, d'être venu dans cet endroit maudit, d'avoir privilégié ma vanité à notre ami. Quand Marie a parlé de la fin de tout, j'ai su qu'elle était sur le point de mourir. Dans ses dernières paroles, elle m'a fait jurer d'ensevelir cet endroit. « 21 heures. Un événement invraisemblable s'est produit. Alors que j'étais assis près de ma femme, j'ai remarqué quelque chose dans sa main. La broche de Lady Bradshaw. Elle avait dû l'arracher en s'agrippant à elle. En retournant la broche, j'ai remarqué qu'elle ressemblait à l'une des créatures que nous avons sorties des cocons. Étaient-ce les démons dont Marie parlait? Bradshaw savait-elle depuis le début ce que nous trouverions ici? Ensuite, le cadavre de Marie a bougé. Ce n'était plus ma femme, mais quelque chose d'inhumain. Prise de terreur, elle a bondit sur moi. Et c'est au barreau de la cellule que je dois ma survie. Le camp est en plein chaos. Des ouvriers ont disparu. Et Lady Bradshaw est retournée dans la cité des profondeurs. Personne ne sait pourquoi, mais je crois le deviner. Elle aspire au même destin que Marie. Elle veut devenir l'une de ces créatures. « 1er janvier 1947, 1h du matin. Le saboteur a encore frappé et nous a enfermés ici. Nous sommes piégés avec ces choses. Tout autour de nous, elles hurlent dans les ténèbres. Crow a braqué sa mitrailleuse sur les catacombes. Marie avait raison. Nous ne pouvons pas lutter contre un ennemi qui n'est pas vivant. Il n'y a qu'une solution. Faire s'écrouler le temple sur leur tête, quitte à ce qu'il s'écroule sur les nôtres également. Pas question que ces créatures sortent d'ici. Quand ce temple s'effondrera, ma femme et moi serons enterrés ici, côte à côte. Je ne vois personne. Le portrait qui orne ma montre est celui de la Marie dont je me souviens. Pas de cette chose dans la série. Tout est de la faute de Lady Bradshaw. Depuis le début, elle savait ce qu'il y avait ici. Elle nous a menés jusqu'à eux. Tout à l'heure, je l'ai trouvée en bas, penchée sur le cadavre du pauvre Van Nuiten. Quand elle s'est retournée vers moi, j'ai vu qu'elle avait changé. J'ai saisi l'arme la plus proche, un piquet de tente en fer, avec lequel je l'ai poignardée dans le cœur. Tandis qu'elle mourait, des cris affreux ont retenti dans les profondeurs, comme pour répondre à ce flot de sang soudain. Elles arrivent. Nous devons mettre fin à tout cela à travers nos armes. Si le temps le permet, ma dernière mission consistera à dicter ce journal sur place. S'il est trouvé dans les gravats, il pourra peut-être servir d'avertissement à quiconque viendra après. Les eaux de ce temple baignent dans le sang. Nous avons mis le pied dans un lieu inexploré et réveillé une présence ancienne et dangereuse. Une malédiction qui prend une forme purement indescriptible. Depuis des siècles, nous avons vécu dans l'ignorance, inconscients des horreurs qui sommeillaient sous nos pieds. Et nous avons ouvert sans le savoir les portes vers la folie. Je crains d'être passé, mais je dois faire mon devoir. Nous devons sceller ce lieu à tout jamais. Pour l'humanité. Marie, pardonne-moi.
Ashley Tisdale, welcome. Now, Ashley plays Rachel in Supermassive Games' Dark Pictures Anthology's House of Ashes. All right, Ashley, what can you tell me about your character?
My character, Rachel, is a CIA operative, and it is taken place in 2003 in the Gulf War. and she is on a mission to find chemical weapons. So she's pretty badass.
Wow. This is your first time doing a video game.
This is my first time, yeah.
Wow. So how does that process compare to maybe the stuff that you've done, on camera before?
I think that it's just very obviously a different approach to it. I do a lot of voiceover for animation series, so I would say it's more in line with that because you're in a studio all day and it's like you and the script and then also like some of the other characters, but it's just like kind of going through it really fast versus, one scene on a TV show or a movie could take like an hour to 2 hours. So you're constantly going through it. It's a really long process, but it's cool, it's different. You're wearing like heavy machinery on your head and it's like getting all of your facial expressions. So it's pretty crazy.
You're gonna just be like completely like so muscular by the time you're done. Your neck will be.
My neck is super strong.
Yeah, the strongest neck ever now.
Yeah.
And how do you prepare for something like that? Then I feel like the script, it's not maybe necessarily you're preparing for particular scenes. Everything is so varied. Like, how do you really kind of get ready for it?
I pretty much, obviously read the script beforehand, but I don't spend a lot of time on it like I would another script, like either with a movie or a TV, because it's the same thing of how I approach animations, is that I know when I'm here, I'm gonna be with the director and they're gonna have me do it like multiple different ways because there is multiple different directions the character can go. So if I were to fully prepare, I would maybe like put myself in this like, well, it's gotta be this way. And I wanna feel free to like be able to have them say, do it more sympathetic and do it more angry. And so I kind of don't fully prepare. I just know who the character is, and as long as I know the intention of what I'm saying, then I'm good.
What is it?
The guy who served me, I don't know. He was looking at me pretty strange.
Probably doesn't get to see a woman like you around these parts very often, especially one that's showered.
With any series or film, there's just that one linear path for your character,
Yeah.
and with this, you have the option of
There's
living out
many
the
different arcs.
multiple. Yeah, how do you kind of keep it all straight or keep a continuity with your character through all that?
Honestly, I don't even remember half of it. I think it's just obviously relying on the director, and the guys at Supermassive, they're just really great at knowing where we are in the storyline. And so it's just heavily trusting them. And then, just kind of knowing, that it's just gonna go. I can't, there's just so many different areas that it can go. And I could die in one of the things, and I could become a vampire. I can like live. It's just like, it's so crazy how opposite.
It's got to be interesting too to think that someone's gonna like play you in a game, and then maybe you'll die or you'll live or you'll like the people will be in control of your future.
I know. I think it's gonna be really crazy just seeing my face on like the character. That's gonna be so wild. It's so crazy how far video games have come. It's so much more cinematic and like the movies that it's pretty wild. It's like beautiful to watch, but it's gonna be crazy.
Now, I guess we have a couple rapid fire questions that I'd like to hit you with as well. Okay, ready for this? Okay, so bitten by a vampire or buried alive?
Oof. Yeah, bitten by a vampire.
Oh, really?
Well, then you get to live forever, so,
That is true. Okay, I never thought of that element of it. Things that you've shot so far, do you have a favorite scene?
I think my favorite scene would have to be probably early on between Rachel and her husband. It's a flashback, and it's them in the car, and it's a moment in time that kind of changes everything. And what I love about it is that it really shows who Rachel was and how it changed her to become who she is today. There's just so much happening in the game that it's just like a moment where it's just like really kind of stripped down and one-on-one, and I think it's a really beautiful scene.
What is it?
The guy who served me, I don't know, he was looking at me pretty strange.
My sole objective, Rach, is to make you happy. Doesn't matter where we are or what we're going through, I'll always put a smile on your face. See? I told you.
So how do you get into that? Because I feel like, it's sometimes it's such a sudden change from one scene to the next. So how do you kind of really get into that moment so quickly?
I think how we've done it is that we would start off with the earlier stuff.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you're building to the bigger pieces. And Yeah, usually the end of the day, we'll have like the biggest stuff, whether that's us like screaming and fighting, because it obviously drains us and our vocals. So, you know, they know to kind of like have us do the whole like action stuff at the very end of the day.
They're breaking through the perimeter.
You got any bright ideas? Now's the time.
It's really odd of being like, okay, now we're gonna be sweet, and now we're gonna be screaming.
It's
and then
hard
you're
to
gonna be
go
dying,
backwards,
and then you're gonna be back alive again, and this is a touching moment, and you're gonna die. Yeah,
Yeah.
the first time is gonna be like a strange experience, kind of going off on your own and acting out that kind of
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting process to watch, and it's different from anything I've ever done.
Has it been hard to navigate doorways with the camera on? Like, do you find your...
Oh, no, I take them off right away.
Okay.
Anytime I can get a break, because it is a heavy thing. And so it's just like most of the time I'm sitting on the couch with it, like holding the helmet up, because it's like, you know, it's like a weight on your head. So
yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
It's expensive equipment. You don't want to like bang it on a door frame.
No.
Well, now that they've got you in the game, they can put you in anything.
I know. I'm so excited because I've never been able to play something like this.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. Cool.
Thank you.
The creature has powerful claws and fangs formed from hardened, unidentifiable tissue. Two of the incisors appear grossly malformed and discolored. Blood is like nothing I've seen.
We always like to base our stories in some sort of real-world truth, a piece of folklore or a piece of mythology. With vampires, obviously, there's so much to choose from cultures all the way around the world. So rather than pick one particular legend, we thought it would be fun to create a monster that ties all of those legends together in some way. So we had an idea for a creature that lives underneath the ground and emerges every few years. Our vampire is actually an alien parasite. It invades a host body. The creatures that you see in House of Ashes, the winged demonic creatures, were actually once an intelligent race of cosmic nomads traveling through the stars on this big generation ship. They somehow picked up this alien parasite and it ravaged through their crew, and their ship went out of control and crash landed into prehistoric Earth, where it was buried under the ground in what is now the Zagros Mountains. Being a parasite, this alien slug needs to find a host body, a living body or a recently dead one. Once it invades that body, it grows inside it, killing the host if host is still alive. And its tendrils reach out into the host's brain and hijack its central nervous system, sort of reanimating it. It then goes on the hunt for blood. It feeds on the adrenaline in blood. So in order to get the adrenaline pumping, it needs to terrify its prey. So it shrieks at them and drags the kill out until the blood is really, really pumping, and then it strikes.
You keep lookout. Fuck!
Look out for what?
We wanted to show the viewer different forms of the creature and make them think that initially it's a demon, then they think that it's a vampire, and then finally the revelation that it's an alien.
So just to explain where the parasites have come to infect some of our game characters, this shows a game character who's going through different stages, is infected, starts to affect the character, and there's a final look from that where the fangs are coming through the skull. So that's one of the developments of how our classic vampire is actually a host. Another example of that is an Akkadian warrior who's been taken over by the parasite, and again the fangs have come through, the vines are poking through the head. This human is now being taken over, his skin is dying, the parasite is trying to grow within. But we progress that into looking at the design on the alien demon, I call it. This had to have very unique elements that came through from the head design. So we've got a very animalistic head here, but also we've got the fangs. These fangs are coming from the parasite that's within, so the fangs are coming through. It's almost deforming the shape of the host.
Oh, shit. The fuck happened to your teeth, buddy?
We refined that further to what is our final head, where the ear is part of the skull and it flexes open. A bit like a frill lizard, where the frill of the canopy comes out, our head is actually moving apart. And we've got illustrations that show that, where the head is dormant and is concealed, but then as it hears and wants to resonate, the skull expands open. And that then allows the creature to hear and pick up on anything within the environment.
With
characters, it's always good to base at least some of it on anatomy that we recognise, and that provides a foundation for the vampire. It's bipedal and human in its structure, but we've just changed things, tweaked them, made them a bit more alien. So, for example, the ribs joined together at the sternum to form a rib cage, but we've expanded it out quite a lot, and some of the ribs are fused together to make bony plates. It's just to suggest that it's had a very different evolution from a human. We tried a version with human-style legs, but in the end, we went for a dog-type leg. It just made it more creature-like and more threatening. And we added bird-like talons on the toes, just to give it some natural weapons and make it into a predator. We didn't want to focus too much on bat reference, because we were trying to steer away a bit from the classic bat-like vampire. We did go for 2 sets of bat-like wings. One of the shots in the game is of the vampire jumping down from above, backlit with its wings out in an attack pose. And when we saw that pose, we decided to add an extra set of wings attached at the hip joint. It just really helped that silhouette.
The environment is very interesting because they can use not just the floor, they can fly as well. They can walk on the walls, but they've got claws. So imagine something really interesting in a cave where you've got creatures coming towards you, from every angle. I think that visually is something impactful and very interesting to look at, and scary.
One of the interesting parts is the finding of those nuances and details that really bring the character to life. How does it move? How does it behave and act? We had motion capture, and then we had the more traditional computer animation keyframing. On the motion capture side, there were a variety of different setups that we tested. We had arm extensions, and then we had various different leg stilts that our creature actor used. But what was apparent when filming this was that it really limited his movement. So in the end, we decided not to use any of that, and he just performed himself. Basically, this gave him the freedom to really express that physicality in acting and gesture.
They react to sound like bats. They hear you, they hunt you.
The vampires have these head plates, these bony kind of gristly structures on their heads that click and vibrate, kind of like a bat's echolocation. They're used to survey environments and to locate prey. We went through a lot of different iterations, and we tried a lot of different things. Like I think I sampled keyboards and mouse clicks, and then used a scooter fender and a wet trainer. And it made this organic, clicky, squeaky sound. And then I had a friend of mine, like in the States, take a taser to a bunch of meat and a bunch of like organic material, and it came out a lot more aggressive. It just sounded meaner.
I got something for you!
And then the biggest thing that we had was this little tiny drum and a rod with fishing line in between it. So when you twisted a rod, it made this clicking and popping sound. So that ended up being one of the main tonal layers for it. But none of them quite fit right. But once we put them all together and like layered them all together on top of each other, then it started to actually work as a holistic, organic thing.
Something entirely new to House of Ashes, which is a classic horror movie trope, is the vampire point of view shots, which we use a very wide lens, and we use some perspective distortion on those shots, which helps sell the power and hunger of the vampires as they're chasing the soldiers, and it helps make the soldiers feel very small and very weak. And doing so, it also helps us as the player realise that these vampires are inhuman, and that when we're watching what they're doing, they're bouncing off of walls and they're climbing on the ceilings and flying. At any time in the game, the players could be running through an endless maze of tunnels, and we use very tight shots on these with a lot of handheld, a lot of tilt again, to emphasise this claustrophobicness and this tension and not being able to see what's chasing them. And it's in complete contrast then to later on in the game where we see these grand environments that they uncover, which could be a temple, a city, or things like that, that we have these wide shots that really sit still and just let the player soak in that environment.
This is the most complex creature that we have ever animated in the studio. But the challenge is more than a challenge, is the fun to do it. Because it's not a real creature, you can push it in a way that you can use your imagination to make it more interesting.
We're facing an enemy we know zero about, an enemy of unknown size and their home turf. Sucks to be us.